as a colleague for them, and I guess my first day as a co-teacher, so forgive any mistakes, but I'll try to do my best, no problem.
So he's going to take care of the exercise we're going to have. Okay, great. A case study. How was the last class? Did you enjoy it? With our colleague Stefano Carazzati, was nice for you?
Yes.
Was interesting? Yes. Some of you asked for the presentation. Or maybe, okay, somebody, the slides, but maybe somebody now that, I don't know, it's a girl, Daniela maybe, yes, but anyways, it's online, so you can have it on my space, something like that, a Dropbox or. So, today, we're going to discuss about, again, industry, that's our main topic, because before being able to define a strategy, you need to understand where you are competing. So that's why we are spending so much of our effort in understanding what's an industry, how you can define the boundaries, so on and so forth. So today we're going to go on the evolution and the life cycle of industry. Then we're going to have a focus on the management of strategic changes. Then we'll see which can be changes, how can you manage them. Then how you can develop new capabilities, because we discussed a lot about how can we enter a new market or create a new market or have a new competitive advantage. Basically, you need to have some capabilities that the other don't have, or maybe they do have, but not as much as you do, right? So something that makes you different. And that this difference must be perceived by your customers, right? We discussed that. Anytime you don't have it clear, please raise your hand, but I know you do. And then we have the case study. It's about
Spotify is the first one.
Spotify and
we can also do Netflix if we have time.
Okay. So great. So I guess this is something you've already seen, right? This is quite well known, also because all of us, we are customers. So we buy products, especially technological products. So we know very well that these are the usual curves of products, or even services, but more related to products, and especially these curves are very well known when you discuss about technological products, because this curve can be very short. Then we'll see some examples. What happened? Oh, no, just stay on the, yeah, perfect, stay here. So basically, how does it work? You usually have, you have this graph, there's time, and of course the level of sales, because we are used to understand the level of the point of the life cycle we are in an industry, comparing it to the volume of overall sales, not your sales as a specific company competing in a market, in an industry, but the overall sales, right? Which means that as long as the sales are increasing, you are in a positive slope, right? So in the positive curve. As long as the overall sales are decreasing, which doesn't mean that your sales are decreasing, right? Because maybe you remember the BCG matrix when you have the cash cow, for instance. Remember when the industry is decreasing, but you have a big share of the market. Maybe you can manage to still have an increase in your sales, but you have to take care of it because the overall industry is decreasing. And then you will need to understand why. So you get to a maturity point in which you don't usually, here it's difficult to see, but there's a time in which the sales are almost flat. So nothing changes. Here is a point, in a curve, just one point. But you can imagine this is not precisely a curve. And then at some point, the overall sales will decrease. That's for sure. I mean, maybe it can last 30 years, but at some point it will be reduced. And you don't see it, of course, but at some point, maybe it can go to zero, but it usually goes to zero. There are some cases in which maybe this product can be still sold for any reason, because maybe there's one specific, yes? From? Ah, oh, great. Thanks for, sorry guys. We cannot even see when you write, so this is another issue. Keep settings. But can you see the our desktop?
Okay.
Okay. If you put presentation. Okay.
Right now it's okay, Professor.
Sorry guys, my bad. Sorry. Okay. Anyways, I don't know. From Zoom, did you have clear my the topic I was discussing, or maybe you have some points that you want me to get back to?
No, it's fine, Professor.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, it won't happen again. Put the presentation. But you don't see. Okay, so we can move forward. Okay, so basically, we are discussing about two types of innovation. So you saw this life cycle, right? So basically, you understand that something happens when the slope of the curve goes down. What's happening there? Just people or companies will not buy anymore that product just because they don't like it anymore? Usually something happens, and usually it's an innovation. It can be a breakthrough, so something that is completely innovative, or just an increase, an improvement in the quality, in the characteristic, the intrinsic or extrinsic characteristic of the product or the service. So here we show you why this innovation can happen. And usually we discuss about product or process. Do you see the difference between process innovation and product innovation? Tell me a difference. Yeah, please.
Product, for example, is the introduction of a new technology. Process is change the process of how we make the product, the supply chain process, and not strictly the product.
Okay, great, thank you. So, yeah, please.
In general, with the product innovation, you go for a product, so you go for a efficiency more than process, because with the process you have a more, you go for, your goal is a more effectiveness than efficiency. Difference between.
Okay, well, I would agree partially because usually I like the difference between effectiveness and efficiency. I like it very much. It's an important economic aspect, you know, because efficiency means you are both effective at a lower cost. While being just effective, it means that you reach the goal. So you get to the point you want to get. So the product has the characteristics it needs to have, right? Efficiency means you are also looking not just at quality, but also at costs. So you can reach that goal, that characteristic, at a lower cost. Usually this lower cost means that you are improving your processes. So I would say that process innovation regards more the efficiency aspects. So you are producing maybe the same kind of product or very similar one with new supply chain or new operations, logistics or operations. On the other hand, when there is a big product innovation, there's something that is changing into the product, or in the way also the product is perceived by the market. By market, you know, I mean either clients, customers, or also companies, you know, B2B, B2C. Okay, any other question, issues, or from home? Okay. So now we can see if they. So this was something you already knew, but these curves change a lot with respect to the specific industry. So technology-intensive industries, for instance, pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, computers, so on and so forth, usually have this curve very, very short, which means that the slope of the curve is very deep, either increasing or decreasing. And that usually these curves change a lot during time, because we know that these kind of products have a great impact on innovation, pharmaceutical. We saw it with the vaccines, right? Yeah. Vaccines, yeah. So how this market was evolved by new disease as the COVID, new products, pharmaceutical products, for both vaccines but also cures, drugs that you can take when you have this kind of disease. So you saw that not just television or smartphones or strictly ICT products, but any industry that implies a new technology, a sophistication of the product itself. Other industry, for instance, food processing, construction, apparel, usually they reach a maturity level. I told you before that there are some specific industry in which they don't ever get to zero, because maybe they get to a maturity level, the famous red ocean, in which it's very difficult to enter, because the companies that are competing are actually have reached, let's say, the highest level of sale they can have. Maybe they reach a level of sophistication of technology that cannot be evolved, but still there are customers that are willing to buy that kind of product. Okay, for instance, I mean, maybe it's a simple example, but there are bags like Hermes or Chanel or this kind of bags that have been sold for the past 15, 60, 70 years maybe, and they will be the same in the next 50 years maybe, because it's not about technology there, right? It's not about the innovation. It's about the brand, the awareness, so on and so forth. For instance, we also discussed about the regeneration of this curve, because it doesn't mean that the companies that were competing in that industry in that moment, in that curve, will no longer compete in the next curve. Because especially in the motorcycles, in TVs, there are these big competitors, you know them, both for motorcycle or TVs, Samsung, LG, so on and so forth. It's very difficult that they exit the market. What happened is that, okay, Samsung developed a new 5K whatever kind of TV, right? It's very, very difficult that LG and the other will no longer compete. They will study this new technology, they will align with this new technology, and in a certain period of time, they will have the same technology to offer. And that's what happens, but also with smartphone, right? It's very difficult that you can, as a company that are competing in that market, you can manage to exit all your competitors, right? They will align with something. Usually it's like that. I'm thinking about an example, but usually it's a monopoly. I mean, it's very difficult that no one will align. It depends on how long will it take to the others to get to your point. And that's the famous first mover advantage. And that's why you will see we are looking for capabilities. Because a new capability that allows me as a company to have an innovation, either in process or in a product, and that allows me to be unique for a certain period of time. As long as this period of time increases, your profits increase, right? You know that at some point you will not be unique because the other will try to make their own efforts to get at your level. But if you make this time get bigger, you can have great profits of that. So you see that usually in this kind of markets and industries, these curves are very frequent. So time, well, actually it's 20 years, so it's not so frequent actually, but still, I mean, now it's different. This gets to 2010, but still, in this kind of industries, these curves you will see will be always closer with respect to time. Because innovation, this curve changes because they get to maturity, maybe decline. But the point is that you never want to get to the declining phase. When you see the maturity, so when you see that the curve, it's no longer increasing, then you need to innovate in order to have a new curve and to do not see yourselves decreasing. Make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. From Zoom? Okay. If you don't see anything, it's me. Okay, perfect. Okay. So again, this is another example of this S-curve. So now you have, again, time, and it's not written there, but you have sales, okay, on the other axis. So basically, this is an example in which we want you to see what can happen at the end of the S-curve. For instance, in the pharmaceutical, hello, just in time. Sorry. You're new here. I've never seen you.
Yes.
Okay. Where are you from? Great. And try in English. It's not that difficult. You couldn't attend?
The course.
Okay. Okay. What's your background?
I graduated in October in business science.
Business. Okay. So basically, I'm just asking because I want to see whether you already know this kind of topics. So you do, because this is something very you usually take care of these topics during the bachelor in economics. I guess it's economic, right? Economic science.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I was discussing about the evolution life cycle of an industry. So we saw the 4 steps of an industry. So from the introduction to the decline, and now we see the S-curve. So how the curve that compares time with the level of sales of a specific industry actually moves, and how this curve can change through the innovation. So here, for example, we have the performance when it's connected to the physical limit of the sale of a product. Physical limits, because, for instance, we see that it's impossible in some kind of industry to overcome the level of sales. So you cap. You know, sometimes you get to a cap. So you sold the overall amount of products that you could possibly sell. Okay, this is because maybe imagine construction industry. You know, you usually sell your sales as in a geographical boundaries, because usually construction are not worldwide, right? So basically, you could possibly build as much as homes and new building as the regulatory plan of the city allows you. At some point, that's it. Okay, so usually regulation is a big aspect in this kind of industries. So you see that as before, these curves are very important to be addressed, because if you, as the top management, CEO of the company, knows where this curve is and where it will be, because this is a provision, right? You need to forecast when this kind of curve will cap the maximum level. And so you see when the new curve will begin. And this is how you manage to have a proficient and effective strategy. Okay, guys, I hope it's okay. Yeah. So here we want to see the structure of the evolution of the life cycle of an industry. And we want to see in each period, let's say in each phase of the 4 phases, how these variables change. So, for instance, demand side. So, who's buying the product? Usually, when the new technology or the innovation of the process is offered to the market, there are few people, few companies buying that product, and we call them early adopters. So that's why the level of sales is never 0, but usually at the very beginning it's 0. Then it takes a while to increase the slope, because you have to convince the others to buy the new technology or the innovation you are proposing them. So that's why at the beginning there are these early adopters, and usually they are also called the influencers, right? Now everybody's called influencers, but before in economics we used to say influencers are those people that are willing to buy a very brand new product, a very brand new technology. They want to test it, and if they like it, it means it's a good innovation, and they will spread it. Okay, Amazon pays many people to actually try new products, to leave a feedback, right, on the website or on the app. So the others will see and say, oh, but what? Many people said it's fine. It must be fine. Okay, but if they don't like it, so if the early adopters actually buy this product and don't feel that it's actually giving them something more, they will give you a bad feedback, right? So it's very important for the companies that are launching a new product, a new innovation, to get in touch with these people, to know who these people are, to see which will be their idea, their feedback on that product. So if everything goes fine, and basically the early adopters will actually have a positive feedback on the innovation of the product you are proposing, then the growth will start. So there will be a rapid increase in market penetration, which means that the slope of the curve is very deep. At some point, we saw you get to a maturity, which means that the people that will be willing to buy that product are capped. It's very difficult that you can increase the level of the sale. But the overall market again, right? So when I guess, I remember that it's some, any company in the specific industry can be in a different point of that curve, because maybe your specific product as a company has capped, but maybe another company is managing, maybe with marketing strategies, advertisements, so on and so forth, is managing to increase again, but the overall industry is at the cap. And usually there's a high level, there's high price sensitive customers, which means that at that point where the industry has reached a maturity level, you compete on price. Because everybody has the same technology. Remember about television, everybody has the 5 case thing. So basically you're not going to look, you as a customer, you're not going to look for a better concerning quality product, but you want the same product at a lower price. And again, how it is possible? Because you remember we discussed about economies of scales. At that point, all the companies competing in the industries usually have a high level of sales, which allows you to have economies of scales, because you can spread the fixed cost on more units, so the unit cost decreases. But you also have the learning, the economies of learning, because you learned how to do that. Your management knows how to manage the market. The operations are well managed, the production chain, the supply chain is well managed. So basically, you usually see a decrease in the unit cost. So all the companies in the industry are trying to compete on cost. This is, this is generic, right? It's not for each single industry, but usually that's what happened in that case. Then at some point, it starts the declining phase. And that's when the ocean gets red, because all the sharks knows that the food is decreasing, so basically they're attacking each other, right? There are some companies that will invest a lot on R&D, research and development, so they will try to create a new curve. Others, which are not willing to spend that much money on innovation, will spend on aggressive marketing strategies. So decreasing a lot the price, also get into dumping. You know, dumping is when you sell a unit at a lower price than the cost. So you're actually losing money, but you don't want to get too much inventory, so you don't want to have your product stuck in your inventory, so you know that you will have to burn it at some point, so you would rather sell it at a lower price than your cost rather than have to dispose of that. Make sense to you? And this is the obsolescence, sorry, in the demand side. So, for instance, another example, maybe we won't go through each of them, or if you have any questions, please ask. But technology, at the beginning, there's a big and rapid product innovation. So when you know that you are on the maturity side, or the beginning of the decline, usually some of the competitors will come up with an innovation. Usually those ones that are more willing to spend on R&D, on innovation, that's their focus, their strategy. Then what happens? That usually, and there are many examples of that, for instance, maybe we had a case study on that. To me, it's very interesting how the office suite won the battle, because you know when the Microsoft started their suite with Excel, Access, all those kind of products, Windows, the operating system, there were other companies that were actually trying to do the same. What happened is that at the beginning there's a battle, because you know early adopters will buy 2 or 3 different kind of products, because the early adopters like to have new technologies, new products. But at some point, one needs to win, because you need standardization, which means that at some point customers will want to have the same product. You know this big issue concerning, you know, Android versus Apple, you know, iOS, or again all the world against Apple, because Apple has an operating system that doesn't connect easily, doesn't communicate easily with the others. So you know that when you get to have a MacBook, iMac, whatever, so more about computers, you know that you are not accessing to what you will be accessing with other kind of operating system, okay? So Microsoft maybe wasn't, so the Office package, the Office suite, maybe it wasn't the best one, but they managed to be the standard. So when everybody's having Office, you need to have Office. We need to have Office, for instance, as a company. We cannot have the Apple suite, because we could find many problems in communicating with our clients. So when you get to the standardization, everybody's buying, then the curve has a big increase in the slope. Okay? So at some point you get to the maturity, because the know-how is diffused. The knowledge doesn't have this big change, but it's incremental. And you know that when the curve is declining, the companies, usually more than one, that are actually selling that product are not willing to spend a lot in innovation. So there are very little changes in what happens in the characteristic of the products. Just have a quick view on trade, which is the one that is flat, because trade, we put the production shifts from advanced to emerging companies, which means that with this trade we mean the exchanges that happen between companies, right? So usually it's very, maybe at the very beginning, this is very low. There are very little changes. But then through the overall curve, this happens a lot, because when you launch a new product, when a company develops a new product, a new technology, we saw before, I told you before, that the others will somehow imitate them. So at some point for you as an innovator, it's not interesting to get them outside, but it's better for you to sell licenses, for instance, your patent to others. So you can actually have profits on the revenues of the others, because you know that at some point they will have that technology. It's impossible for you for you as a company to think that the others will not imitate you, especially in a globalized world. So maybe it's more interesting to exchange with the other, exchange patents, licenses, so on and so forth. Okay. Okay, what is inertia? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Good. So what is the inertia? What do we mean with inertia? Yes, come up with something, guys.
Inertia is when there is a level in which the market don't move anymore and you are stuck on something.
Exactly. My colleague here said the right word.
Stagnation. Stagnation.
You know, when there are very little changes, stagnation, right? So this is because usually at some point, especially the maturity, we saw the S curve, so when the industry is at maturity level, the companies are trying to see what to do. Let's see how the market is going. Are we at the beginning of the maturity? Are we already at the end of the maturity? What are we good at? Are we good at innovating, or are we good at imitating? Or maybe we are no longer interested in this kind of market because we saw opportunity elsewhere. maybe because the regulation changed, maybe because the level of the, let's say, of the profitable of the industry is changing. So that's a moment, and there's usually a moment in which there's inertia. Nobody's moving, nobody's doing anything. So the market is going. That's because usually to bring up a change, there's a big cost. And especially because inertia, sometimes it's useful because with very low effort, you have the same result that you would have with an effort. Okay?
Meanwhile, there's inertia, you can also like spend your money in innovation, and you can like try to find out some new innovation.
Absolutely. In that period of time, so when the industry is at a maturity level and we see inertia in the market, some of the companies, the ones that are more willing to innovate, will spend money in innovation. That's for sure. So they make the market go by itself, right? By itself. And in the meantime, that they have sales, revenues, and profits, they spend their dividends, their profits in innovation. That can happen. Or maybe the others are just looking for another market to go. So that's where the strategy needs to be developed and implemented. So here we have example. So organizational routines. You know that even in our brains, we have patterns between our neurons and synapses, which are very, very difficult to change. So when you are used to have a perception of something, because the pattern in your brain is actually well defined, it's very difficult to change it. That's why humans usually have repetitive actions, repetitive thoughts. And this happens also in organization. That's because an organization of a company, it's based on people. So the people within an organization will actually produce the same results because they use the same patterns. And this is something you can get stuck with, right? That's why innovation is so difficult. You have to have the culture of the innovation in your company in order to actually reach a good level of innovation. Social and political structure. Change threatens existing social relationships, guys, obviously, right? So when there's something new and you are using a new, imagine social network, right? How they change the way we communicate, also the perception we have of ourselves, of the others, and also the ethics aspect, right? Before, if you insulted someone, you could be arrested. Now it's very easy to hate people on the social network. So also the level of ethics and the morality besides and behind people that use a product is changing. And so that's why sometimes change is so difficult because you need to change the culture of the people. And so, and then we have other examples. Then we can move forward. Okay, this is just numbers. Synthesis to see. So this is when, okay, from 1920, so before the First World War until last year, basically. So you can see which were the companies. This is for you to see which were the industries more that had the high level of sales and how it changed, right? So in 1912, that's the left side. So 1912, US Steel, oil, coats, Pullman was buses, right? It's called Pullman. Used to have the higher level of sales, I guess, in US, right?
Yeah, it's US based, but I think they have a lot of exports. So
yeah,
US is historically known for a lot of primary goods manufacturing back in the day, so they would export steel, which is why it's one of the biggest.
You can hear me, right?
Sorry, you want me to repeat?
Raise your voice.
So it's interesting that's 1912 and 2020, because if you look at 1912, you're thinking the beginning of US, so construction, production, a lot of workforce, a lot of raw materials, skyscrapers. To build skyscrapers, you need a lot of steel, which you would export pretty much everywhere. In America's case, mostly Latin America or Europe. And then the war came and everything, we export the New Deal, a lot of policy.
And then what happened in 2020?
You have what's really, I think, the most interesting thing in this chart here is that you have a lot of companies whose product didn't even exist back then, whose technology, like so Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, Alibaba. Maybe Alibaba, you could kind of imagine a market share or like trading, but the way he made the way the company created itself is around technology that didn't exist. However, the first and biggest one, Saudi Aramco, it's the Saudi American petrol company in Saudi Arabia. That's still something that is rooted in, I guess, antique times. But like you said, innovation is coming. So they're a company that invests in trying to stay primordial in the market. So they're actively investing to counter innovation, for example.
So I guess Lorenzo is saying something that is interesting for you, the youth, but also for us. We're not that old, they, at least. But still, again, oil is still at the top of this chart. Oh my God. But that's because innovation is tough. There are political interests, lots of money, so almost 2 billion, so not 2,000 billion, so 2 trillion. It's GDP of the US, so it's something so big that it's difficult to move. But still, the other, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, they were even in the thoughts of the customer back in 1912, right? But even in 1984 or 2000, yes. But this is interesting because you will see this chart will change through time, and at some point, Saudi Aramco, will not be there. And now they know, especially Saudi Arabia, they know that this is changing, and they are investing in other kind of industries because they know that at some point oil will not be that much important in the overall world. If we will still have a world, climate change and this stuff. So maybe I can leave the floor now. Yes, it's knowledge. We'll just go. Well, no, maybe Lorenzo, you can go, you
Really?
want to move? Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not an economist, so I'll try and do my best here. Let me see. I would go back to what we were saying earlier
You
on,
can hear him, right? Okay.
on stagnation.
Stand up.
When I said I used the term stagnation, I thought that was interesting because I guess most of you are Italian.
Yeah.
So the word comes from stagno, so it's not very easy to move. And like she said, you don't have much choice. You have to come up with, like you said, innovation and find a better strategy to adapt to future challenges. So in the case of stagno, you might build a bridge or build a boat across it. Or exploit existing resources, capabilities, your position, maybe go around or try to find an understanding with someone who has a boat or has a bridge and try to cross the marsh in English. So you have multiple strategies, of course, to go through your difficulties. So I guess you have to, as a company or as a corporation or anything, you'd have to try and expand your vision as broadly as possible to try and understand where you can invest. Is it R&D? Is it trying to find a completely new product or try to dump? It might help your image. For example, you're selling so cheap, people will want to buy your product only. And then when you come up with something else or the whole model changes, you are still going to have a good reputation for your clients. So you need to understand and try to figure out which is the best sector to invest in, best strategy to invest in for your own future development. So you have to take so many things into account. So it's a big strategy. What else would I mention on this slide? Structural ambidextrosity. I'm unfortunately not an expert in this either, but I guess that would mean you'd have to look back at yourself and try to understand how to move your own company. So instead of looking out to the market, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm curious about what do you think about structural ambidextrosity? What it is? You know that? No? Never heard of that?
Never heard.
You do? Oh. Okay, so basically, you know that companies have an organizational structure. And usually they are divided by units, business units. This is because last 20 years, organizational theories show that it's better to be organized in business units, especially when you have many products. Also because you saw the supply chain with Professor Mosco, right? The value chain, supply chain, value chain. Okay, so well, the supply chain is how you actually manage to get the raw materials or the products or the human capital you need to start from the input to the output. And when the output is put on the road, okay? The value chain is something that regards your company. So the value chain is how you actually, as a company, produce value for the market. And you know that the value chain is divided into vertical lines and horizontal lines. Those vertical lines are the ones that actually provide a specific service related to the product operations, usually. Okay, so how you manage to get from the input to the output, the one that you produce by yourself as a company. The horizontal aspects, the horizontal lines, are those kind of services and units that are flat for the overall product. So when you have a marketing, accounting department, this is not related to one product, right? You use the same accounting department for each and every product. Okay. So this means that usually you need to have to be ambidextrous, which means that you need to use as a company both your left and your right hand in order to get to a strategical change. Because you cannot, this means that you don't need to see just one aspect of the company, not just one business unit. You need to see the overall company, because change is so difficult that even if you come up with a great innovation, you know, for instance, Apple, it's something that Steve Jobs came up with this idea. They call them skunks. You know, skunk is it's an animal. You know,
Smells,
the
sprays you with
Okay.
smells bad, black and white.
You know, the one that smells exactly. So that they called the people that were actually involved in innovation skunks, because they had this kind of department and nobody knew where they were, what they were doing. You know, they were apart from the company, and they were just there thinking about how to change things. But it worked somehow. You know, Apple was great innovator, but still sometimes they were seen so far from the company that they couldn't talk to each other as business units. And it was difficult for them to understand where the company was going, the organization, how was it actually built up. Because when you are just abroad, I mean, away from the overall structure, you can be as much as innovative as you can. But still, you don't understand the organizational process, the organizational structure. You don't get to talk with the people that will produce the product that you invent. At some point, it doesn't work. And it changed. It's no longer like that anymore. Because they understood that, yes, there must be people that think outside the box. But then, if there's a structure, an organizational structure, a company that needs to follow their roots, they need to communicate. And this is what we mean with ambidexterity. You need to work with both your hands as a company. Everything is clear? You have an example, any question, anything?
So the more organizational units you have in your company, the bigger is the index of ambidexterity.
Yes,
Right.
the biggest can be the index, because not all the companies manage to be ambidextrous.
Okay.
So not all the companies manage to be innovative, because they are stuck. The difficulties in managing external business units, external departments, because everybody has a head of department. This head of department, the chief of the department, has his thoughts, her thoughts, and you need to communicate with them. You need to make all the chiefs get around the table and actually managing to get along with each other. It's hard. That's why the culture is so important. We invest so much as companies, even KPMG, our company we work for, invest a lot in culture, in making us talk to each other. Well, before COVID, we used to have a lot of meetings, a lot of dinners, you know, events in which you need to talk to the other colleague, not because you work with them. Maybe we have different sectors, different industries, different services, but we need to know each other. We need to have the same values, same culture. Otherwise, innovation is not possible. Okay. Next slide. Okay, again, here we try to give you a toolkit, something to see how you can manage to think about the strategic change, but also implement it, right? Because our objective is analyzing the industry we are competing in or we want to compete in, understand ourselves as a company, so which are our capabilities, which are our strengths, right? Through the six courses of SWOT analysis. Yeah, so SWOT analysis, but you know what it is, right? Strength, weakness, opportunity, and threats. And at some point, yeah, you get to your strategy. Yes, I'm an innovator. I like to be the one that when the curve is increasing, we are in the climbing of the curve, I am the one that's going to innovate. I will bring up an innovation process or product. Okay, that's my strategy. How do I want to get there? So I need to understand what is needed to be the innovator. And then I will implement my strategy. So I will buy the products I need, I will buy the raw materials I need. For instance, I will search for the people that will allow me to have a greater impact on innovation. I will also construct an organization that will allow people to be willing to innovate, so on and so forth. So for instance, creating perception of crisis. You know that this is kind of, well, usually every time there's a big crisis, like for instance, the COVID case, there are people that think that this is actually managed by someone, no? Or this China thing. Because maybe, you know, I don't want to be ideological on this, but maybe a big country that saw that another country, such as US, such as Europe, were actually managing better the overall economic and political situation, giving them a big issue, such a big virus like a big crisis created by the COVID virus. Well, maybe it could actually work out for them, because at some point they will have the same crisis, but then they will have more capabilities, more energies, more resources to come up with a solution of the product. And maybe you know us, maybe China or Italy, let's say Italy, right? So nobody's get you know, too personal on that, but maybe a country, let's say Italy, managed to exit the crisis before the others. And this could actually help. So sometimes, you know, there's the let's go back on time so nobody gets personal, which is, you know, can be. But for instance, in 1929, the crisis we had, the US had, you know, the black market, all that happened. Many people think that it was because the dollar was having big problems on the world market, you know, the First World War, so on and so forth. So many people think that some bankers, people that owned the banks, wanted that thing to happen. So the market to go down, the stock market, I'm talking about stock exchange market, to go down. So I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just for you to understand that sometimes crisis allows companies to easily change, because there's this disruptive change, so you need to change, right? And that's something that you might, as a company, wish for. Okay? Establishes stretch targets. Demanding performance targets can generate ambition and mobilize efforts. This is concerning the strategy and how you put the strategy into your performance evaluation. You know that every company evaluates its own performances, but also the performances of the business units and of the people. But we get also our retribution and our bonuses concerning our productivity. If you set very, we got stretch targets, so very high standards, so very difficult to reach standard, you impose, you mandatory, and you want your organizational structure to get to the exchanges, right? Because otherwise they're not going to have their bonuses, or maybe they're not going to reach the objectives they have. Make sense to you? Well, individual initiatives. For instance, discounts, I was talking before about Apple, but also sometimes the CEO of a company decides himself, because or herself, let's say, herself wants to bring up an innovation, and she knows that usually the person that has the highest power in the company, one top management, can manage to leverage and to use all the leverages concerning resources allocation, people allocation, partners discussion. So getting to talk to other companies, because sometimes we need also the other companies to get to the innovation we want. So if the person entitled with the innovation is the CEO, usually it gets a greater, let's say, importance within the company. If the last person, the stagiaire, that works that started 3 months ago in the company, maybe if she comes up with an innovation, it's difficult for her to make it, real. But it's because people have power and people have influence. Well, so on and so forth. Let's move forward. I don't want to. It's 12. Wow. Okay. You want to go with this?
So we are about 10 minutes break. So
Okay,
and then
right.
we go ahead with knowledge management and the case studies.
Okay, so yeah, it's 12.
Yeah.
So
More than half.
okay. Okay. So if you want, we can have 5 minutes break, maybe. Right for you? Then we go with the knowledge management, and then which we end up with the developing your capabilities, which is very, very much linked with the knowledge, you will see, and then the case study. Okay for you? Sì. Sì, bravo. Tu sei organizzato bene, sei stampato.
A volte più mia, a volte più CNS, però poi soprattutto
Passo.
il CNS,
Sì, sì.
le CAP, e anche liberi di scegliere, e tutti vogliono un pezzo delle
Certo, chiaro.
questa cosa per varie persone, quindi la sto vedendo su e giù. Esatto, poi alla fine verrà un altro progetto.
Sì, allora adesso passo a questa cosa. Anzi, se tu riesci a avere
Expertise, sì.
molto verticale.
Seguire lei è proprio reale.
Non sa tutto. Infatti lo voglio chiamare io perché io lo studio con lei.
Lo studio da una mano, se magari poi
Fatti semplice.
sì. Cambia di fatto, no? Guarda che stazione.
Io non ci posso. Mi butto così. Sì, poi serve. Torno a dopo, chiaro?
Nessuno ti stava dicendo. Vabbè, guarda,
Sì. Sì, è buono.
sto male perché sono le portiere e io ho detto, ma c'è mai passato, non mi conoscono, sono 20 anni. Quella che fa fare Ragazzi, ma io Ragazzi, buona prosecuzione. Noi ci vediamo sicuramente giovedì passo in ufficio, che c'è l'intervista con Cannata. Che gioia infinita. Sì. Bye guys. Bye.
Shall we? Go to quick on this slide. If you guys can still hear us, let us know if there's a problem. So the examples here are all oil companies, and so it's the same product, same pretty much process. What differentiates oil giants is actually pretty smart and very political as well. So ExxonMobil, they went the finance way. They were the holding company for Rockefeller's empire. So that's one way you can go to institutionalized finance. Royal Dutch Shell was interesting. Historically, the Dutch had, a very vast empire, so they had contacts all over the world, which means you can have small holdings, small oil wells and refineries, etc., a bit everywhere. So if you have a lot of small ones, you get a big piece of the pie. Then you go to British Petroleum, and that's kind of the worst one, but also economically speaking, the best one. So they went into Persia, nowadays Iran, and discovered oil, and then signed a deal, and put a fake king in place, and kind of did their whole British thing. And therefore, they got a big source of natural resource that they can exploit just themselves. Unfortunately, Aramco isn't on here, but it's kind of the same thing in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia and Iran have like the biggest oil reserves in the world, so it makes sense that BP and Saudi Aramco are like one of the biggest companies in the world. Two of the biggest. Eni, I'm not so sure because it's relatively small compared to the three we just talked about. But I know for a fact Eni is very interlinked with Italian politics since forever, since Eni has appeared, since the Italian government has started. It's very connected, and from what I know of people working there, it's very personal basis. On the borders of being illegal, but we are Italians, so that's how we do business, and it seems to work. And Mobile, that's also very interesting. You don't really know this petrol company, but if you watch a Formula One race or any kind of automotive racing, there's always Mobile ads because they make something very important for any petroleum-derived product, which are usually engines. It's lubricants. So they diversified and created an extra facet to their product range, which is inherently necessary for anything related to petrol. So you can also innovate. Going back to what Beatrice was saying about Apple, if you have iTunes, you're still going to have an iPhone. So you're creating something that needs something else to work. So if you have an iPhone, you don't have iTunes, well, now there's Spotify, etc. But back in the day, you'd have to buy a Mac or download iTunes, the official Apple app, to be able to put using iPhone. So create something that needs for sure your own product. Any questions on this slide?
You can go on slide 17. Okay, do you know what knowledge management is? Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I don't know.
The development of capabilities of organization is influenced by knowledge management. Knowledge management is a series of processes, tools, whose common value is whose common goal is to generating value from knowledge. We have two forms of knowledge: the explicit form and the tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is knowing about, consists of facts and instructions. For example, we can assimilate explicit knowledge to a public good. Do you know what the public good is? Public good is something that once created can be shared at a low cost among a series of individuals. And the second form, the tacit knowledge, is the form of knowledge which is more difficult to articulate or codify. For the strategic implications, the first form of knowledge is difficult to protect from rivals, and this is why it couldn't be a competitive advantage for the business. On the opposite, the tacit knowledge is protected from rivals, and it could be a competitive. It could be a competitive advantage, but the challenge for this form of knowledge is to share, to replicate this form of knowledge within the business. Here we have four forms of knowledge. This picture is a little bit tricky, so I try to the form are socialization, internalization, and coordination. I have another picture and I'm going to share it in the box. The first one, socialization, is the sharing of knowledge between two individuals. And this is the sharing of knowledge, of tacit knowledge from an individual to another individual, and the forms of knowledge are both tacit. The externalization is the second form, and consists in sharing the tacit knowledge to explicit knowledge among individuals within the same group. And the last two are combination and internalization. The combination is the sharing of explicit knowledge to group within an organization. So explicit knowledge within different groups. The last one is the process of understanding and absorbing explicit knowledge into tacit knowledge held by individual. So organization, group, and individual. We can go ahead with the case study.
So I guess all the case studies we've had, they're just tools to help you guys understand, I guess, how to proceed with the thought. Like, I think that a couple of guys can get into groups maybe.
Correct.
I don't know. I have two more actually. But it's an easier. That's you guys. Yeah. I have one last one. I suggest you help each other out. So this is called the business model canvas. I don't know if they can see it on the line.
We can find it online.
Yeah. They can find, just type business model canvas and it will appear anywhere. If you find the raw one with nothing on it, like the ones I gave to the students, it's best. Otherwise, I can try and send it to you. So basically, the goal here is to, the same way as SWOT analysis would work to understand, your strengths and weaknesses. This is how to paint a very good picture of what a company does, and therefore where it can go, how fast it can go, how badly it can fail, the risks and the advantages of every potential move you make, like a chance, to calculate 3 moves ahead before you make a move. This is going to help you. So the example I came up with is Spotify. So I don't know how you usually do these case studies, if you get time to write it down or something, or if you do it as a discussion. I think discussion is more fun, but if you guys want to read what's written on there and figure it out by yourselves, so what you want? Who wants discussions? Who wants to think about it?
But just for like understanding what is it about.
So yeah, so the subject, the company, because all one word is Spotify.
Okay.
So let's say, I don't know, you need to understand what Spotify's, world is. What is it? Consider yourself as the future CEO of Spotify. You've just been hired, or as a rival company, such as Angami, for example, and you want to overthrow Spotify. So whichever you want to be, the people are good, figure it out, and then you need to do the same job as either of you. It's map out what the company has, how it's going. So here you have basically these boxes here are the key partners, all the way from starting from the left to the right, key partners, key activities, and key resources. The value proposition, so what this company is offering to its customers and why it makes it so valuable. The relationship it has with its customers. So besides the value of the product, is creating a relationship that's specific to that company and therefore its image. The channels it uses, so this is more logistical, infrastructural, and the customer segments. And the bottom you have the cost structure, so essentially how they make money at the end of the day, and the revenue streams. So for Spotify, if you think of Spotify, it's a cloud-based musical exchange app. So when you think of Spotify, that's the first thing that comes, music app, right? So where would you put that? Music, where would you put the general idea of music? And then we'll break it down into those seven. If you're going to put it in one of these boxes, where would you put it? Yeah, you'll put it. So let's say it in a more technical way, a music library. Data, terabytes, I don't know what there's over terabytes, but they have a quantity of music, and that's where you put it. So its key activity is has a music library available. And now we're going to see what we can do. Anything else you can put in key activities? So if your company
For Spotify, the key activities is the streaming of the music, or
yeah. So that's also, so you have the what, music library, and then like you said, streaming. Then I think you can innovate. So whatever innovation that follows your train of thought where you're going, I would put it more in value proposition. So sharing a playlist with a friend, or even creating a playlist for someone that only they can see. That's something only Spotify can do. That I'm not sure how Spotify is doing that. But it's a value it offers its clients, right? If you go back, so to key activities. Well, actually, now that we know that they have music and have a lot of music, what does that mean? Who makes music?
The artists. So the main partners are of course, the artists.
Okay, but
Yeah.
guys, do you want to try to fill it and then someone
And
will
they talk about
Yeah.
I don't.
Is it okay?
Whatever you prefer. I don't mind doing either way.
Okay.
You have 10 minutes. Then someone you can
If you need a hand, or you want to trickle your brain.
Customer segments. Vabbè, forse per chi non lavora è con la pelle di pizza, cioè non esiste. Questo, ah sì, penso diciamo che
So we are working in the same company, so Spotify for
Whatever, like, it doesn't really matter, like, you're asking which one you
no, he is just done. He was asking if we are both working on Spotify.
Oh, yeah. You're both working. There's another one, but yeah, it'll be fun.
teamwork.
But I think we can start.
Yeah, you got it?
No. No problem.
Channels is the easiest one for Spotify. Channels is like how they bring, how the company brings its products into the page. So they don't, it's like there's not good access to Spotify. Well, the channel itself is the app. App is the channel. How you get to the app, it's another channel. It's outside of. You guys need more.
Ah, è vero. Tra l'altro. recenti, ho capito, ma c'è tanto, riprende vedi qua, vedi, vabbè, ci sarà uno prima del consiglio.
You guys ready?
Yes.
I don't know. Doing what I was doing. Okay, so I guess one of the groups has to. Who wants to do it first? I guess you can take the masks off.
Perché sarebbe stato ogni settimana, sempre il file.
We love you. We're the best ones. So, it's bad they can't see it, but I guess for you who are on video, just pay attention to what your friends are gonna say. So, what did you write down for Spotify's key partner?
Okay, talking about the Spotify business model canvas, the key partners of Spotify are, of course, musicians, but also music labels. So, because everything that is part of the creative product of a musician is a key partner of Spotify. The key activities are the possibility of creating a music library in which you can stream the music, and also the podcast. That is another form of activity that is the key for a business model like Spotify. About the key resources, of course, copyrights are the main resource in this business model, and of course the brand patents that grants you the possibility to stream the product, the music. About the value propositions, we the possibility to create the playlist and also sharing them in low contest. So I mean, you can sharing for your friend to your friend, but also the possibility to the artist to create his own playlist and sharing with the clients, the listeners. About the customer relationships, we signed that Spotify gives you the chance to have a free streaming, so you can use the platform in free. If you or also the premium membership, so you can choose the way to listen to the music, making a membership for the customer or a free streaming. The customer segment is everyone, because you can share from the young student to the artist also. Like I said, the artists can share their music, their playlists, and their project. The channels in which Spotify uses its stream are also very different because you can share it by smartphone, smart TV, PC, tablet, and also personal computers. So you can share it from every dispositive. About the cost structure, we also signed that the key cost is of course the resources and the copyrights, but also the salaries that Spotify gives to the engineering for the construction of all of the platform. The revenue streams come from advisory for the most part, advertisement. Sorry, for the most
Advertising.
part.
Advertising or advertising?
For the most part, but also from the membership.
Membership is what you're offering. As a client, I subscribe to your membership.
Okay,
So subscription.
What else?
That's good, you did it all. If I have to count, I think these guys got about 70% of the things that are on the answer sheet. So, good job.
Thank you.
If you're working for Spotify or trying to take it down, you'd have a good go at it. You guys want to give your vision? Stand as close as you can to that one. There we go. So from key partners, you want to start?
Okay.
That's right.
Yes, the partners, we for the artists, of course, the music industry, labels, and discographic companies. For key activities, in general, the streaming of music and podcast, and all the activity, for example, creating plays and the top for every country. Key resources, we in particular the figures to develop the digital infrastructure. So engineers, but also the communication staff is an important part of the Spotify activity. And value proposition is offering music when you want and where you want. So the utility of the application at a low price, and also fight illegal downloads. Yeah, customer relationship are built through the membership system, and also thanks to the possibility to share contents on social media platform. Yeah, channels, you can find Spotify apps on app stores and social networks in general. Customer segments. Now maybe it's more a mass market, but they are focusing on young people and also families. That there are special kind of memberships for this category. The cost structure is mainly focus on copyrights, artist fees, the cost of the wages for employees, the people for the digital infrastructure, and the digital infrastructure, the physical point of view. And for the rest, yeah, there are advertising, subscription. We also brought events.
Smart. They didn't even say it. It makes sense. Events, Spotify events, makes sense, makes money. All right, so you also have a lot of stuff, sometimes a bit different than them, but the main things you both got them. Some things they got, you didn't, some things you got, they didn't. I can give you the answer if you want to take a seat. I don't want to stand up the whole time. So, you guys are seeking, it won't be offensive here to my American side, so I'm just going to be like, I think you're thinking very qualitative, which is good, because this clearly was made by a very square-minded person. So in qualitative thinking, for example, you said for the users, you started going into like young people, which is true. No grandmother uses Spotify, unfortunately. You said events, which is kind of like trying to you broaden the vision, which is good. But in the end, on something like this, you have to use what you have and also a very cold mathematical mind. So in the example where both of you failed to find in customer segments, what it says here, and the way it says it, it's indicating of what I'm trying to tell you, is for whom are we creating value? So it's like, the way the sentence is said, I don't know if you feel it, who are we creating value? We're not saving the world, not feeding poor children, we're like creating financial gain value. So the one you forgot, both of you, is advertisers. Because advertisers don't care that Spotify is giving music to people who love music, or giving a chance of an unfamous artist to come up and make it a stream. They have not a care in the world. They just want value. They want the curve to go up there in their business. So sometimes you have to think as a cold-hearted capitalist if you want to make food. You're the one setting the economy.
Yeah.
So.
We're not there yet.
So another thing you guys both missed, but kind of did say in key partners, are rights holders. So you can have record companies or labels, but you can also have independent rights holders. I'm thinking of an example, but I might be wrong. But Britney Spears scandal, Free Britney. I think her dad individually held rights to certain of her material from a certain year, a range of years. So if Spotify wanted to have that selected Britney album, they would have to first for all the other albums go to Universal or something, and then ask her dad for that particular album. So again, that's an extra thing you can add, but not important. The main things you all said. In key activities, then there's something you need to connect from key partners to key activities, is what you do with the key partners. So an activity, so the partner is a label company, the activity is signing a contract with the label company. So also try to think that, because if you want to destroy, if you're attacking the company, you'll think, how can I ruin the contract? Not, you can focus on the record company, like try to look better to the record company, but you also think, how can I ruin the contract? Or if you're a new CEO, it's like, how can I make the contract better? And how can I look better to the record company? So you have to think of the means to reach the end. What else did you both say? Oh yeah, in cost structure, you guys forgot that you did kind of mention it, was operation costs, the servers. Like, of course, you need to pay the salary of the technician, but when a server breaks down and you need to change the whole part, you need to buy a new server from, I don't know, Dell or HP or whoever makes servers. Then channels, I guess, I didn't understand it, but I guess we're too young for this. PC software program. I had no idea Spotify has a software program. I don't download the app on computer, software program. So I guess maybe that's also for artists who want to upload their song onto it. There must be a more developed thing. But if you step back, you think any digital provider of service, Netflix, Spotify, YouTube, they all have a code version, not the front screen, the storefront one. They also have a dark YouTube and a dark stuff where it's all code. And so that's also something you can reach. It's a channel to reach certain types of customers or potential artists. In this case, would help Spotify. What else? Customer relationships, and it's the last one. Here, I kind of disagree with the model because I think you're right. A relationship you have with your customer, customer in this case, is the membership. You would say, I don't know, if I'm Spotify CEO at some point, maybe, oh, you've been with Spotify 10 years, you get like discount on the next person that runs well. So that's the relationship. They're saying that the membership goes in the value proposition, which is kind of true because if you consider it, I think this was made by a boomer. This is why they put it there, because an old guy would be like, "Oh my God, I have to go all the way to the store to buy CDs." Well, the days has changed. It's not a value proposition that they're offering a digital copy of music. It's normal.
So the membership.
So the
customer is not a direct relation with the customer.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. They're putting it in value proposition because I think they're thinking it from a material point of view. Like you could stay in your house and get music, but as you guys both said, both of you said, it's a customer relationship because it's attractive. And it's kind of, again, you have a premium relationship, a premium membership, normal membership, free users. So obviously with money, you create a better relationship, which is, I'm saying it in a weird way to get my point, right? The more you pay, the better deal you get. So the better the customer relationship gets. So here, for example, they put Facebook, Twitter, websites, WordPress. Made by us. Spotify streaming platform, right? So I think whoever made this kind of mixed these two, the value proposition and the customer relationships. And also channels, it's really much more simple. Like you guys went, which is the infrastructure, the phones, the tablets, etc. I think Spotify doesn't care about that. We just make the app. And then they know that whoever's my customer is going to have a smartphone anyway. I'm not going to make an app and make a bundle for 80-year-old grandma so they can get a free iPhone in the process. You're just going to assume that your potential client already has a smartphone or a laptop or something. So if that's clear with all of you, want to add anything else?
I guess from. Do you have any question? Okay. Okay, thank you. See you the next time.
I guess it's useful if your jobs are going to be linked to this. But now we are ready. So if you start your own company, at least it's more useful than stuff you used to learn in high school. Calculating and triangle, whatever does that.
Thank you. See you next Tuesday.
I don't know when I show up, but I think it's Thursday, right?
Yeah.
Next week is about special lesson. It's about this thing our company did with the EU to provide innovative services for public administration. So it's kind of capitalist, but also pretty cool to help people.
Yeah.
Probably I won't be there, but you can Google it. It's called IPS, Innovative Public Services. Okay. So it's how to create an app to go to the doctor or pay your bus ticket. So something here that we use.
Yeah.
Perfect. Enjoy. Have a good weekend.
Have a nice day. And,